Hi, it's Kevin. Welcome to Relationship Ready. Thanks for coming back. Appreciate your support. Please subscribe and like and share with your friends too, and all the people you care about. Today, we're going to talk about premarital sex. Is that a thing? And is it still relevant? Is it different than it was? And what do we think about it now? So we're going to define what premarital sex is, and we're going to look at a little bit of the data and explore, like we explore, and hopefully you'll enjoy almost as much as premarital sex. The definition of sex: an act of intimacy between two people, with consent or without consent, can still be sex. But for relationship, and the definition within relationship is defining what sex is for you and for you and your partner. Because sex can be anything from an intimate look across a room to intercourse, hardcore, vaginal, anal, oral, and everything in between. So what is premarital sex? Premarital sex is traditionally vaginal intercourse, but traditions are all different now. And gender is all different now. So what is intercourse? Intercourse between two people may be vaginal, but it's placement of an object inside, a part of the body inside. But old school premarital sex was taught to teenagers, taught to kids to be able to go, abstinence is the best way to prevent pregnancy. Because sex was originally taught, it depends on how back you go originally. Originally, it's an act that people did, that they performed, that may have been pleasure and may have been for procreation. And then our systems, religious, cultural, started to adopt the idea of sex for procreation and took the pleasure out of it. Did it really take the pleasure out of it? No, but it took the enjoyment of the pleasure out of it. So you weren't supposed to enjoy it. You're supposed to feel guilty about it, especially if it was premarital, because the expectation was put on to be able to enjoy sex for procreation after marriage, which what premarital sex is sex for enjoyment before marriage. And then magically, it's supposed to change after marriage and then be for procreation. And you're allowed to enjoy it with a partner of consent that you are committed to for a lifetime. Marriage has changed also, because marriage used to be defined between two people, generally a man and a woman, for a lifetime and for a commitment of love, honor, and obey. But obey has changed to love and honor, and not obey, because women used to be property and used to be people who were supposed to obey. But now, are you supposed to obey each other? Or are you supposed to mutually agree and support each other? So vows have changed, commitments have changed, and marriage has changed. Therefore, premarital sex has changed also. Because there used to be loopholes of, if you perform oral sex or anal sex, is that not quite premarital sex? And could that be justified, but weren't you supposed to feel guilty anyway? Especially if you did that behind the church parking lot? So, since marriage has changed and sex has changed, then is premarital sex relevant now? It is if it's still your value, and it is if it is your partner's value. Because if it's an important concept for you, an important concept for your partner, then follow it. Because that's important to your relationship. So is premarital sex relevant? Let's look at the data. Nowadays, the studies talk about anywhere between 77% to 97% of people, humans, by the age of 44 have had premarital sex. That's whether you're married, that's whether you're single, that's whether you're in a relationship or not. That's a lot of premarital sex by the age of 44. Now, young people might think 44, that's old. And people older than 44 might think 44, that's young. Well, it's an arbitrary number that increases as you go up. But by that age, most people have had premarital sex. And that's defined as intercourse. But for the young people, generally, by 19, 70% of identified females and 65% of identified males have had premarital sex. Females more than males. Females generally, hopefully, as our culture progresses in the right side of history, have more say, although it switches back and forth now, and who knows whether females will have say over their bodies as much in the future. But generally, 70% of females have had more sex than males. Why? Maybe assertiveness of the patriarchy, maybe choice, maybe because traditionally in our American culture, the role of females in adolescence and in adults has been to say no, and males are trained to pursue as far as you can go until you get a no, and sometimes trained to ignore the no, which is hopefully different now, and consent is taught amongst our youngsters and in our youth and in our adults to retrain the adults who didn't learn the consent and how important it is, because it is vital. Premarital sex is still a thing, maybe a little less relevant of a thing, but marriage is a little less relevant now too, because the age for people who get married now has risen over the past 25 years. From it used to be about age 22 as a female to about age 25. As a male, it moved from about age 24 to about age 27. And how many people generally do not get married? About 16 to 25% of the population. And that number is rising also, because it used to be 16 and now it's about 25%. Because the institution of marriage is not as important. And the importance of marriage, because people can be in a committed relationship without the legal and process and pageantry of marriage now. And that's a perfectly fine option, which it used to be expected to go through the pageantry and go through the legal and become married. But that age is raging. So what does that do for premarital sex? It means there's a longer period of time to have the opportunity or to put off premarital sex if it's important to you, because you have to not have sex till you're older if you're getting married older. So what's important to take from this to be able to apply? Decide your own boundaries. What works for you and what works for your partner. Communicate about what that is to you and your partner. Then have the conversations about sex, about what's important. Where are your boundaries? How far do you go? What are your kinks? What are your passions? What are your excitements? And is premarital sex an important thing to you? Or is it not? Some people believe that it's important to have sex before marriage to be able to have a happy marriage. But if your entire marriage is just based on how good your sex is, that's going to be a struggling marriage to go into. Because hopefully there are other parts of your marriage that you go into too, of intimacy, physical, emotional, and spiritually, connection, shared activities, and shared dreams and hopes that you can support each other on. Because if your only hope is that you have good sex going into marriage, not a reason to get married. It's important to decide what sex is to you and what premarital sex is. Is it just vaginal intercourse? Or is it the full range of everything else? Is kissing premarital sex? How astute and how demure do you believe, and how much do you want to follow what your body wants? And balance those things out for you, about your excitement and your desires. to decide for you what sex is and decide for you and your partner what sex is. Things that might be exciting to your partner might not be interesting to you at all, and vice versa. So what did we talk about today? We talked about premarital sex. It's still relevant, not as much as it used to. And the ages go up now. For marriage is less important than it used to be also as an institution. And we talked about some of the statistics. Decide what statistic you want to be. And decide what you want for your sex and whether you want marriage, and if so, what you want it to look like in your relationship, so we can all be more relationship ready. Thanks for watching. See you next time.